All right.
There you go.
Welcome to In the Boat with Ben and Rachel. I am Ben,
I'm Rachel.
and we are relaunching this podcast. We actually did a podcast called In the Boat with Ben. It was just In the Boat with Ben a long time ago. I think we did something like 40 episodes, and
I feel like it was more than that. It was every week.
for a year.
Was it only a year? I thought it was more than that. It doesn't matter.
It
But
doesn't matter.
it's a long time.
And on that show, we did talk about some of the same topics we're going to on this show, but we also went into family dynamics and that kind of thing. In this iteration, we're going to be sticking mostly to things related to creator lifestyle. So we are both creators. I work full time for a SaaS company. I work remote and I do video production for them, and I get to do a ton of really fun creative work. And then I also do video stuff for myself on the side. And Rachel, what do you do?
I am an author. I write books
That's right. Yeah, she just stands at her computer and
all day.
all day and writes books. We both work from home. We are raising a family, a large family. We've got 6 children. I almost said between the two of us as if
Uh,
I
six
don't know,
children
like
between
in,
the two of us.
but they are all ours together.
Yeah.
Um, and and so those things, working from home, trying to, as a creative person, trying to get a business up and running, trying to manage your schedule and your productivity, all of those things are just, with that alone, we have more than enough things to talk about and to share. And we just want to be a voice of encouragement and share some of the things that are working for us, talk through some of the things that we're struggling with, so that we can help people who are in the same boat as we are.
Oh,
Oh,
I see what you did there.
yeah. So, with all of that said, today's topic is, I have to look at it again. Why can't I? Okay. Today's topic is today's topic is this isn't working. And what I mean by that is we're thinking about it from the standpoint of our personal productivity. You, if you're like me, you maybe struggle with productivity and motivating yourself to get work done or managing your schedule or whatever. And so there there's no shortage of great productivity hacks and ideas out there. And so I'll try different things from time to time, kind of bring things into my arsenal of personal productivity, and find every once in a while that, oh, this isn't working, or this isn't working anymore. And from so that's kind of, excuse me. So that's the experience that I want to talk about. That experience of, you're trying different things and it's not working. What do you do? How do you stay productive? How do you continue to publish things and get stuff done? Because when I look at what I do, I consider myself a very productive person. And when I use the word productive, I'm thinking about the number of things that I publish on a regular basis, and also the tasks that I kind of check off my task list. And and so, even though I struggle with productivity and I struggle with managing my schedule and that kind of thing, um, I do find ways to stay productive consistently. And part of that is struggling with that question of, like, is this still working for me? So, what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I think we're very different personality wise. So, in personality theory, actually, there are task oriented people and then there are relationship oriented people. And I think you're definitely more of a relationship oriented person, whereas I am definitely a task oriented person. Like every day, even on the weekends, I have a list of things that need to get done, you know, and I don't feel like I've fully experienced the day, I guess, in a way, unless those tasks are getting checked off. Even if it's just a few of them, and I, you know, carry some over. I will say though that during the pandemic year, I do feel like my productivity, because I feel like I'm a really productive person because of being a task oriented person. I sometimes have to take a step back and say, okay, it's time to stop working, you know. But I feel like the pandemic kind of slowed me down with that. Like I felt like I wasn't getting as much good work done. And I think it was more of a mental, emotional thing, because we don't often think about how the stress in our lives and the emotional things that we're going through impact our productivity. And so for me, it was more of trying to find a balance between how do I work through these emotions and the stress. And so I guess where I'm going with that is that for me, it was more about trying to figure out where the burnout spots were and how to rest better and take care of my personal self before I could take care of all the professional stuff, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is an important thing to kind of preempt this conversation with, as we are going through a very difficult time just in the world, lots of things going on. Definitely in my memory, these past couple of years have been some of the most stressful, depressing, challenging, um, I don't know, even I might even use the word demoralizing in some in some cases. It just so hard.
Well, and exhausting too. I think what really alerted me to this is that we before pre-pandemic, we were kind of the family. We would do monthly family fun days with our kids, and we would, you know, pack everybody up and go to the zoo and stuff. I think it was like a whole year and a half we didn't do anything fun with, because we were just so tired. And so looking into this new year, and I was very hopeful about, you know, the start of it, and we've started having family fun days again, and it provides a picture for me that we are finally learning how to better care for ourselves. And I don't know, we just forget that in our professional lives. Even Psychology Today had a really great article in their latest January February issue about how more people are working from home, and they're working longer hours, but they're not necessarily productive hours. But what that does is that it leads to burnout,
Mm-hmm.
and you're not resting enough. And so they, you know, they had some tips on how to rest better. You know, after you've been working for an hour and a half, you can go for a 5-minute walk or something like that. And I've started incorporating some of those things, and it feels like it's just, I don't know, it's had a really great effect on even my productivity. And I feel like mine is, you know, I get a lot done in a day,
Yeah.
but it's been great to kind of see.
I want to follow that thread, because I think you're really onto something. When you're talking about the different types of productivity, or the different types of personalities, task oriented and relationship oriented, I would definitely consider myself a relationship oriented person. And a lot of my productivity is fueled by my relationships. I really enjoy the people I work with, and I I'm always, the people I work with and the customers that I work for, um, because of that connection, I find that being a lot of the motivation behind why I want to produce good work and why I want to be consistent, is because I want to honor those relationships and, you know, entertain and surprise and delight. And so for me, like, when I put a piece of content out, and I know that in some way it's, you know, helping somebody or bringing a smile to their face, that motivates me a lot.
Hmm.
And so when you're talking about burnout and you're talking about rest and taking care of yourself, what's really interesting to me is that a lot of times, and I think especially up until recently, I think recently there's been more of a
Mm.
shift to thinking about that, but there was so much emphasis on the different productivity hacks, like, oh, use the Pomodoro timer. I don't even know if that's how you pronounce it.
I don't know.
Use a timer, write down 3 things on a note card the night before, like all of these things. And those can be great tips. Those can work really well. But what I think has been missing a lot is just the things that are necessary to avoid burnout
Mm-hmm.
and to keep yourself from, because when you're feeling burned out, it doesn't matter what productivity, like you
No.
can use all the productivity hacks in the world, but you're never going to be as productive as when you're well rested and you've been taking care of yourself.
Yeah, and it's counterintuitive to the way we think too, especially in our culture, because when we think of productivity and even creativity, we're constantly wanting to do more and accomplish more in our day and that kind of thing. But I for me, even putting that little like meditation on my checklist is like, oh, that's another productive thing I can do for my day, even though it's like sitting there for 10 or 15 minutes doing absolutely nothing except, settling my mind. And um, but we don't give as much credence to that because it's always about what can we accomplish in a day, and we forget that that is actually a big accomplishment in a day to clear your mind for the creative work that you need to do.
Yeah, so it's really about reframing rest as an act of productivity.
Yeah, I was the worst one too about it all, and I think that's why because I never incorporated rest. I would take weeks off here and there as a sabbatical, but as far as like weekly rest or even daily rest, I didn't incorporate that. And so when the pandemic hit, I feel like I just kind of crumbled, and I still got stuff done, but I could tell. I mean, when I look back at my to do lists and stuff from the last several years, I'm like, man, there was so much time that I did not. That's how my brain works. I'm like, there's so much time that I didn't use because I was so burned out. And even the stuff that I wrote, I think, well, yeah, I wrote a book that sold this year, but I don't think there was anything else that I wrote that was even worthwhile. I'll clean it up and make it into something worthwhile, but it was just, yeah.
So I'm going to take a quick break here. I want to check out the chat and say hi to folks that are tuning in. We got Colleen. That's actually my mom. Hey, Mom. We got Melanie tuning in. Thanks for tuning in, Melanie. And hi, Anita. Good to see you too. And as we're talking about this subject, if you have any thoughts, any of your own thoughts that you want to share, or any questions that you want to share in the chat, you're welcome to do that. We'd love to make those a part of the show. So yeah, so going back into, I want to pick up the from what you were talking about just before we took a quick break there. So you were talking about,
How burned out I was in the pandemic.
yeah, yeah. I think the pandemic was a wake up call, ended up being kind of a wake up call for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if there wasn't maybe a kind of an unhealthy version of productivity that and like in good times, and that's kind of the thing. I feel like in good times it's a lot easier to mask being burned out. It's a lot like you can be burned out and still be publishing things. Um but it's almost like the pandemic just kind of pushed everybody over that edge finally, and it was like, okay, I was I was definitely burning too hot. And that's, I think about your writing journey, and there was a year where you wrote something like 2 million words,
Mm.
and I can't remember how many books that translated into.
It's like 6 or 7.
Yeah, so you would look at that and you would think, "Oh, that's extremely productive. That's great." But then there are some aspects about that that are just not sustainable in the long run.
Yeah.
I would love to hear a little bit like your thoughts on kind of that
Yeah.
versus what you're doing now and how you're feeling about that.
I mean, that was a long time ago, but I do remember. I think it was when we were doing the In the Boat with Ben podcast, and I would talk about how like I didn't even take breaks between what project I was working on and stuff. There was no transition. There was just, I would set a timer, and as soon as the timer went off, it was time to pick up the next project. I didn't like. I have a standing desk, so I was like, well, I'm being healthy. Like I'm not just sitting all the time. Um, but I do remember that there was no break time in that. Like there was no lunchtime, there was no it was nothing. It was crazy. So, yeah, that was a big accomplishment, but it was done in an unhealthy way. And like you said, it's not sustainable. I don't know that maybe if I had continued doing it, it would have played into the burnout. I don't think it did that year because that was like one of the first years that I finally got back to a writing schedule and being productive because I had other jobs before then. So I think it was some of the like excitement of being back to what I wanted to be doing
Yeah, yeah.
and that kind of thing. But so I mean, what I do now, well, and I do want to say this too, as far as productivity is concerned. There are so many productivity books you can read, and I've read a bunch of them. But I feel like we have to find what works for us. And so being very I'm a very rigid person. Not for like I'm open minded, but I'm very rigid in my schedule. You know this because if somebody interrupts me, I'm like, oh no, this is
Mhm.
my writing time.
Yeah.
You need to leave me alone.
Like
Um,
if I hear one of the kids going up the stairs,
yeah,
like it's almost like I have developed this sense of, oh, they're going to go interrupt Rachel, and so I sprint after them and I tackle them before the. No, I'm just kidding. I don't
no,
tackle.
but I do. I mean, sometimes they interrupt, and that's fine because they're super cute. Um, but I'm very protective of that time.
Mm-hmm.
But I just now I forgot where I was going with that because you interrupted me.
I apologize.
No, oh, so what I was saying is I think we have to find our own way to be productive because I'm constantly doing experiments. Like, I used to use a timer all the time. I don't usually use a timer anymore except to tell me when I need to be down for dinner. So I'll have like however long left. But I do now between so I'll make a goal for myself. Like, I want to write a chapter on this one project. And when I'm done with that, I'm going to go for a walk because that's what my mind needs to kind of transition into the next thing. Or sometimes it's just because um, you're you're closing all these threads. If you just go for a walk, it's like a 15-minute walk for me. And the other day, I came up with a title for one of my projects, which had been untitled for about a year now, and it was the perfect title. So you don't know some of the productive things that will come out of just going for a walk. So I've incorporated walks into transitions. I do yoga in certain transitions. Sometimes I keep a thing of weights, like some 5 pound weights up here, and I'll set a timer for like 3 minutes and just do like triceps or something, like just
Yeah.
because physical activity is actually one of those things, especially for creative people that get your brain going. And reading books, sometimes I'll just sit and read a chapter in a book, as a transition between things I want to work on. And so it's not so much, I used to have these like, I got to get this many words done in a day. And now it's more like, okay, I want to write 3 chapters on these 3 projects. And after that, if I still have time, I'll just work on, some other projects that are in the background. And So I think taking the pressure off has been really good for me
Yeah.
because it's not quite as extreme as I used to be. But all that to say, I feel like we need to constantly be experimenting to see what works for us, because I don't think anybody can say what is going to make you most productive except yourself.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I had been thinking I kind of wanted to talk a little bit more about the role of self care and productivity, and then transition to talking about some of the things that you do and that I do to stay productive. But I feel like you did a great job just then of really connecting the two. And so I do want to emphasize how important, and this is something, like, we've been saying for the past couple of years. It's become very clear how important and integral self-care is to productivity, that it is in and of itself an act of productivity, to do things like taking a walk and meditating and exercising, and even, like eating healthy foods and that kind of thing. There's so many things that count toward your overall productivity, that to not think about them as like, oh, this is keeping me from getting things done, is kind of backwards now. It's like, oh
Yeah.
no, this is the fuel that you're putting in your engine. Like, this is your rocket fuel so that you can take off. And so I I would love to hear more of, like, what are the ways that you rest and that you take care of yourself, that you think about as productivity. And you already mentioned several of them, like you do yoga or you'll do a tricep workout, things like that. But
Yeah, arms are important, right?
mhm.
I'm just kidding. I mean, I'm a runner too, so I always start my morning with, um, between a 6 and 12 mile run. Excuse me. And I'll listen to audiobooks on that run, which feels like self care to me because I'm a writer and, I love to read and rarely have time to read because our days are so crazy with kids. So that is definitely, I start my day with the self care, and then, you know, strength training, all of those. I have a tickle in my throat. Hang on, I'm sorry.
It's all right.
All of those things, taking care of the body, and um, I I don't always do this, but I try to take a nap. Oh my gosh, I don't know what's going on. I put a nap on my schedule
Mm-hmm.
so that the days that I'm feeling tired, I just let myself take a. I actually set a timer for 26 minutes. I don't know.
It's okay. Yeah, just
I'm really sorry.
you can take
I
whatever
have
time.
like a bunch of drainage stuff. It's really dumb.
Before the show started, we were talking about how the weather has just been back and forth. So you can hear it in my voice too.
Yeah,
Like,
it's
it's
in my
just
nose, but yeah.
so when that happens,
So lovely.
yeah, when that happens, it feels like it gets it's windier more often, and so it's blowing more stuff around.
Yeah,
We
so today I ran 10 miles in 17-mile-per-hour wind.
mhm.
It was so much fun.
Yeah, and we also, there's a lot of construction going on near our house right now too,
So
so that's
dust and
tons of
pollen
dust.
and yeah, it's
Yeah,
crazy.
it's bad.
So, incorporating some of those things and just letting myself, um, when I feel like I'm not being creative, I'll just, go for a walk outside, because being out in nature and stuff, there's just something about it that gets all of the creative juices flowing and stuff. And so I never let myself feel stuck, because there's always something I can do, physical movement or taking a nap or, any of those. Yoga's really good. I enjoy, moving in that way. So meditation, I do meditation every day between 5 and 20 minutes. So it's not the greatest, like they say you're supposed to meditate half an hour every day, but I haven't quite gotten there yet.
If I can do more than 5 minutes, that's like huge.
Yeah.
So my approach to self-care is, you know, obviously not as disciplined
Yeah.
as anybody surprised. I do I do work out most days, and I start my day with that. Mostly because of logistics.
Yeah.
I think I would probably wait until a little bit later in the morning to do my workout if we didn't have, kids to bring to school and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But if I want to have that time to work out and to kind of get it done, I have to do it early. But what that does for me,
Well, let me just say this as an outside observer. I feel
yeah.
like the days that you do get up and either go out for a run or go to your the gym stuff, I see that you're just more productive too. I've seen that as, an outside observer.
Well, that is a very astute observation because when I do get up and work out, I have this feeling, this general kind of, and it's not every single time, but it's most of the time. In most cases, if I've gotten a good night's sleep and I get up and do a workout, um, I feel energetic, I feel enthusiastic, and those feelings, I feel, I think in many cases, I feel more open to connections with other people. And going back to my personality being, very relationship driven, when I feel connected with people just in general, I tend to be more productive.
Hmm.
And I also think there's this mentality of like, oh, I've gotten this, kind of difficult thing over with, and it's not even 7 a.m.
Yeah,
yet.
there's something.
I can, like I can conquer the rest of the day. So
Mhm.
some of that kind of comes into play.
I
Um,
didn't even mention the sleep thing though, but that's a big piece of being more productive as well, is making sure you're getting enough sleep.
yeah. Well, and
Not
that's
watching things on your phone late at night, Ben.
yeah. I've got some look, and here's the thing. So there are some people who are like Rachel who are very self-disciplined, and then like I think my approach has been I I try to where I can I try to take advantage of kind of the easy habits. So getting up and working out, I wouldn't say it's easy, but it's an easy thing to habitualize because there's a group that I go work out with.
Hmm.
So there are some things that make that easier. Um, Going to bed on time, I big time struggle with. I forget what it's called, but it's the kind of this rebellious feeling.
Nobody can tell me to go to bed.
It's not that. It's like it's there's actually like there have been articles written about it and stuff, and
Oh, I don't know
uh
about this.
it's this feeling that like I didn't get to take enough me time during the
Uh,
day. And so like if I go to bed right now, I feel like I'm closing out the day without having been able to do the things that I want to do. And that kind of comes close to describing the feeling. And then if you combine that with there's so many great shows and so much great streaming content out there, and like all of my friends have posted about what they've done during their day on social media, and I kind of want to catch like so there that I feel like the odds are kind of stacked against people like me. Maybe one of these days I'll get it under control, but I'm choosing to give myself some
no,
grace.
yeah,
And
I think that's fine.
yeah, and you don't give me a hard time about it.
Yeah, you don't give me a hard time when my alarm goes off at 8:30 and says it's time for me to go to bed. So.
Yeah. It's incredible to me. It really is just like wow. It's so impressive. Like your alarm goes off
It's
and
boring.
you go and you have
Mhm.
your 15-minute like preparing for bed thing. You tell the kids good night.
Mhm.
You come back in and you finish up and you're in bed like by 8:05 or something
Yeah.
at the latest.
Yeah.
It's really impressive. That just is not me.
Yeah.
Some nights. So I take advantage of the places where I can, kind of have these consistent habits. But I look for opportunities throughout the day. Like I used to beat myself up a lot about, oh, I don't feel like being productive right now. Like I'm working on something and I'm just feeling like that kind of feeling, when you just like, oh, I don't want to do this. If I start feeling that way, instead of fighting it, I will step back and I'll be like, why do I feel that way?
Mm.
Am I sleepy right now? Do I need to like get up and go make myself a cup of coffee? Should I take a quick nap on the couch? And just letting myself off the hook has been a, a huge benefit to my overall productivity, because what I find is that when I allow myself to take those breaks, I end up finding the motivation. It kind of comes back to me and I get to recharge a little bit. So,
So that question, why do I feel this way, is I feel like it's a really important one for when we feel, especially as creative people, when I sit down to write a story and I'm feeling that, oh, I really don't want to work on this one. And just figuring out why. Is it because I'm afraid that I'm not going to have the words today? Or am I feeling burned out? Or should I give this story a little bit of space to, roam around in my subconscious and then come back to it with fresh eyes the next week? So I think that is key as creative people, to engage that question and figure out what is best for our creative work and how we can best accomplish what we want to accomplish with it. Because I've found myself sometimes when I sit down I do sit down to write the first draft of my stories, because I write them all by hand. And sometimes when I'm sitting with my journal and it's a particular story that I feel like I need to get done quickly or something, sometimes that feeling comes over me like, oh, I don't want to work on this one. And some of it is because, I feel like the vision I have in my head is not being translated to paper, and
mm-hmm.
sometimes I just need to give it space and let it breathe and come back to it. We don't want to make excuses and put things away forever, but I think there is value in setting aside projects and coming back to it with fresh eyes.
Yeah, I love that idea of taking a moment to self-diagnose.
Yeah.
And I think that's a skill. I think that's something that you kind of have to develop over time.
Yeah, it's not
It's too
easy.
bad we don't like have indicator,
Yeah,
lights
right. This
like
is
in
why
your
it's happening.
like in your car when it, tells you there's something
Yeah.
wrong with the engine. Um so yeah, those are great things. And I feel like just, fulfilling the topic of this show, this isn't working. I think, talking about rest and the role of rest and self-care, um, kind of when you've tried all of the productive, hacks and stuff like that, and you're feeling like this isn't working, why isn't it working? That may be one of the keys. And then two, I think, like when you're trying to be productive, instead of feeling like you have to push through, giving yourself that grace to stop for a second and diagnose and say, okay, why isn't this working? Why am I not productive right now? And then, allowing yourself to kind of figure that out, and then treat the actual root cause of your lack of productivity.
Hmm.
So,
And I'll say for task oriented personalities too, that whole I have to put this aside or I need to take time off, that's a really, really hard concept to embrace.
yeah.
And I think where my mind typically goes, or it used to go, it doesn't so much anymore, because I've seen how great it is to have these little balancing, the walks and the yoga and the meditation, how that's helped my productivity. But I think where the mind wants to go is it wants to say, if I put this away, I'm never going to pick it back up. Or if I give myself this break, it's going to turn into, a month long break or a year long break, or I'm never going to be productive again. And we have to get over that fear and know and trust ourselves that we will get back to it. But I think that was the most valuable thing to me, was to let myself know, hey, you can trust me to take a break, because you're not just going to not go back to writing, but maybe you need a week off, you know?
Yeah.
So.
Well, that's really great stuff. I wasn't we kind of started this episode in a little bit of an unconventional way, talking about the shift to uh doing a more conversational instead of, but I'm so glad that we decided to make this a two-person thing, because I really, I think the perspective that you bring, and especially like speaking from your personality type, um, it helps people in a way that I from my experience and my perspective, I don't really quite understand or get, because it's so easy
Right,
for
and I
like,
don't understand,
yeah,
yeah, we've talked about this. I don't get the like needing to be motivated. I'm always motivated.
yeah,
But yeah, I'm sure we'll get into that eventually too.
yeah, for sure. All right.
So
Well, thank you so much for listening, Rachel. If people want to find you online, where can they go?
it is racheltolson.com.
Yeah, that's where all of your writing, your
Mm-hmm.
books live. You got some blog articles there.
Yeah, I don't blog as much anymore as I used to, but
Yeah. And I am I'm gonna say at bentolson.com. I have not updated my website in a long time, but I do creative projects, and um, I've written some articles and done some vlogs and stuff like that. So all of that stuff just
his
lives
vlogs
there.
are really good too.
Thank you.
I love your vlogs.
Well, I like them because it's kind of like having a motion picture version
Mm-hmm.
of
It's so cool.
a picture album.
If I could do that stuff, I would totally.
Yeah, I need to do more of this.